everybody. Welcome to Comics and Chronic. It's just Anthony here today. But joining me is writer Michael Schwartz. He has a new comic out called Armored. It's from Clover Press, and it's a cool new comic. If you like Army of Darkness, if you're a fan of Blue Beetle, I think there's elements of both of those comics that I think if you like that, you'll love this. But original in its own way, of course. Amazing art by Ismael Hernandez. Michael Schwartz, welcome to Comics and Chronic.
Thanks so much for having me on, Anthony. Really appreciate it.
Of course, yeah. I'm so glad we were able to set this up. We've been talking for a little while. So you sent me this comic before it hit stands. I had a chance to read it, immediately loved it, praised it online because it honestly, I felt like it deserved that. You know, people send me comics all the time. And I've talked about this on the podcast about other books. It's like, I don't want to just say, oh, this is a good comic, and just because someone sent it to me. But I sincerely like this comic.
Awesome.
And I plan on picking up future issues. So thank you for the advanced review.
Well, thank you for taking a look at it. You know, I sent it to Francis Manipul.
Nice.
And this is just a little side story. I sent it to him. And then when he got back to me saying he enjoyed it, gave me a little blurb, he says, you know, the truth is I was going to like ghost you and not respond to you if the comic wasn't good.
Damn, I mean, I definitely try not to do that, even if I don't enjoy the comic someone sent me. But I appreciate that honesty from him.
Yeah, me too. I appreciate it.
But so is this your first comic?
Yeah, I'm a screenwriter. I've been writing movies for I think 7 or 8 years now professionally.
Okay.
And this is my first comic. Yeah.
And so I definitely want to know more about that experience, especially in my own personal career. I've tried to be a screenwriter. I mean, I haven't stopped trying in some ways. And we talk to a lot of guests who do kind of have that transition between like screenwriting and then they're writing comic books. Can you describe a little bit how that journey was for you? Yeah,
like I've always been a comic collector, so I just didn't really understand the world and how to get into comics. Like even as a kid, I was like, well, you have to be an artist to get into comics. I don't think as a kid I realized, oh, these people are writers only and these are artists. Like Todd McFarlane was kind of who I followed. So I was like, well, he does both. That's the only way. It was stupid of me to think that way. But I kind of got into filmmaking and screenwriting in high school. And so I kind of pursued that. But it was a few years ago, I just decided, you know what? I'm sick of writing movies for these producers. They don't get the financing. It never gets made. No one ever gets to see it, or, no one knows about the 10 to 15 movies I've written that just are sitting there with either a producer or, I have a ton of scripts I've written that just no one has seen. So it just hit a point where I was like, you know what? I gotta just jump into comics. I read more comics than I watch movies. Why am I not doing this? So that was kind of the impetus to do it.
Nice. Yeah, I definitely feel the same way. Like I used to, in high school, that's when I decided I wanted to be a filmmaker. I actually wrote a script in high school. Obviously, nothing I've done has ever gotten made, but comics have always been there for me. Like, like maybe if you told me last year, what are your favorite movies of 2023? It's going to be a much shorter list than what my favorite comics of 2023 were. So I totally get that. So it's a world you're familiar with, but this is your first comic, and so the way you got it out there was through Kickstarter.
Yeah, well, I could spend an hour talking about the process of it, but I would say like it started with me hiring an editor, and then he helped me build the comic.
Okay,
I wrote the script, I sent it to him, and then I hired him to edit it, and then he helped me like find the artist. He eventually helped me get me in touch with different publishers, one being Clover. That's who I went with. But Clover Press is the ones that run the Kickstarter. I don't run it. Like that's their model. They kickstart all of their books.
Gotcha.
Everything they do, that's just the model they've set up. They're a smaller publishing company. They're not very big. And so Kickstarter allows them to not only kind of test the waters with some projects and see, what's the interest here? But it also allows them it gives them just a different way to get an independent book out than, the normal way of like, here, it's in Diamond now. Hopefully some publishers, or I mean, some comic stores will pick it up. You know, there's a kind of like a, will they or won't they buy this? And it allows them to start promoting it earlier in a way, because you're promoting the Kickstarter, then people have heard of the Kickstarter, and then they can go buy it in the comic shops. And it's not always what they've kickstarted. So for instance, what we're kickstarting right now in our latest campaign, the stuff that's available won't necessarily be what's in shops.
Okay. Because I remember, so you sent it to me, and then you had announced that their physical copies would be in comic shops, but you had said, 1 week they were out, and then you're like, some shops aren't getting it till next week. And I was like, oh no, I couldn't find it in my shop this week. I really hope. And then the next week I was like, oh, there were so many copies. And that was another thing I was surprised about, because Clover Press, I guess, like you're saying, they're a smaller publisher. I'm not too familiar with them in the sense that I'm not sure I've read any other comics from that publisher. But, I was surprised to see that they're usually, at least in one of my shops, the smaller publishers, there's not a lot of copies of a comic. Maybe there's like 3 to 5. Like, they're not ordering a lot. Your comic, Armored, there were a lot of copies. And when I went this week, there were like 2 copies left. I almost grabbed the last 2 copies, but I'm like, let me leave them for someone else to discover this great comic. But I thought that was so cool.
Yeah, you know what? It's pretty amazing. I don't even think Clover really knew. Like, when I heard, shops put in their orders, and then you always print more and send it to the distributors, and you hope they sell through them. Like, it's like quite a few hundred extras they're printing, and I'm like, are people going to buy this? And luckily, the word of mouth has been pretty good. It's been slow. Like, I feel like people are kind of discovering it, being like, what is this book? And then we've had, people like yourself just helping to get the word out, because no one really knows what it is. I had early reactions from R.L. Stine and Dan Aykroyd, but I didn't know a lot of people in the comics community. I didn't even use Twitter that much. I was just, I think Clover mentioned, maybe you should start using Twitter. I use Instagram more. And so I've started to use it more, and it's starting to get the word out. But yeah, we sold out at Diamond. Like, I think within a week we sold out at Diamond, and then Lunar had copies still. So you might be able to still order some from Lunar. And I know Clover's trying to they had some extras that they're sending to Diamond. So people that place back orders may still be able to get a few, but we are selling out. And that's what's pretty amazing. For a small indie book like this, like you said, hadn't heard of Clover. They really are known for their art books primarily. They're doing like the Marvel art of David Mack, the Marvel art of Alex Malev.
Okay, I don't know if you've seen that. Okay, yeah.
They're doing right now. They're running the Marvel art of Michael Turner, actually. So that's what they're known for, I think, right now. And hopefully soon people will be like, oh, I know Clover because of Armored.
No, I hope so, and I hope everyone listening checks it out. So. I'm sure there's plenty of people that haven't heard of Armored. So can you tell us a little about, the story itself, how you came about maybe... No, I don't want to ask you how you came up with that idea. That's a bad question. Just can you tell us a little bit about Armored?
Yeah, it's the quick answer is it's about a boy who finds a medieval suit of armor. It has kind of magical powers to it, and it's being haunted by the knight that used to wear the armor hundreds of years ago. And so that ghostly knight has to train the boy how to use it and help him kind of solve a mystery as to a certain other boy's death. There's this monster in the town. Why is there this monster? So there's a whole mystery surrounding the armor, where it comes from. The plan is to make it an ongoing series forever, or at least 20 issues. Like, I could wrap this up in 20 issues, but the first arc is 5 issues. And that's what this latest Kickstarter is for, is, it's a complete story. You could read the 5 issues and be like, I'm done. I don't need to continue with Armored, but there is a plan to continue at least 3 more arcs of this story. But that's it. Yeah. Haunted suit of armor with a ghostly knight training the boy.
And I mean, I don't mean to call it like a simple premise, but I think it's such an easy hook. Like, the first few pages of this comic, like, I think that's important, like, especially as someone like me who reads a lot of comics, but also people send me a lot of comics. Those first few pages really sucked me in. Like, not only the art, but everything that's happening, the way you pace it with the panels, like it's just like you see these group of kids, you see Miles, and then you find out what happens to Miles, and you see this dark figure. You get like you get so much in those first few pages, and I thought that was just a great way to start the comic.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, thank you so much. I've done a few con appearances the past few weeks, and it's my first time doing it, but I always put out a few copies of the book for people to look at. And I've had some teens literally stand at my table and read the whole book. And then they're like, I'm so sorry, I couldn't stop reading it. And I'm like, that is great. That is the highest compliment in my opinion. So I appreciate it, Anthony.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, that's so cool to even hear. So it's obviously a book geared towards younger readers, which I think is also cool because I feel like there's not a lot of it, or if there is, it's not necessarily meant for that audience. I feel like certain Marvel and DC comics, like I wouldn't mind giving them to like a teenager, and then but I feel like there's something that just feels more real about this. It feels like you understand, like, I guess, how a teenager is thinking or what kind of story they'd want to read. Obviously, like you're saying, teenagers themselves have stopped at your table and couldn't stop reading, but it does feel genuine.
Yeah, I write a lot of kids' movies. Like soon, Anthony, I know you just had a kid. In a few years, your kid will probably have Gnome Alone, which is a Netflix movie I wrote, on repeat. I get a lot of parents coming by my table being like, oh, did you write the Gnome Alone movie? And I'm like, yes, I'm so sorry if you had to watch that 100 times. I've written a lot of kids' movies. So I knew I couldn't just go jump straight into an adult story. I was like, I need to write something that both adults and kids could enjoy, because I read mostly adult comics. Like I'm reading, Marvel, DC, Image books. I was like, I want it to be like Stranger Things. I know so many kids. I've been to my daughter, who's like 9, birthday parties that she goes to, and I see kids with Stranger Things t-shirts. I was like, that would be perfect. I know almost every adult I know has seen Stranger Things, and I know a lot of kids have watched it. So if I could target that audience, that would be perfect. And that's what I hopefully have done with Armored. I've been told it feels like Stranger Things at points. So
yeah, for sure.
Hopefully,
no, for sure. I think without, like, I don't know why I didn't think about Stranger Things, but yeah, like absolutely, it does have those vibes. Like, and I love Stranger Things, but I just feel like this is, I could set it apart from that as well.
Yeah,
like in the best way possible. Like it is unique. Like that, I want to stress this about the comic. Like the elements that you have, I've seen in other comics. Sure, I think a lot of indie comics, especially, a lot of maybe the pitch or the hook is always like it's X meets Y, but the X that meets the Y here, I think it's way more unique. I think Armored. Yeah, I like the adventure that I'm sure is soon to come. Like him getting like already. I don't want to say him. Like let me actually say Andy, the main character. Like I already like him. You provide, like, it's not like you're doting on backstory or anything. You know that something happened to his parents. He's adopted. He's in this new town. He's obviously, I'm sure, going to make friends with that group of kids, but right now they don't like him. And it's relatable. It's just like I want to say it reminds me of like an 80s or 90s movie where this is not something I'm seeing even in movies nowadays.
Yeah, I again, that's totally the influence in the movies I watch or the books I read. I can't help it. I definitely have been told that influence, and it's funny, like you said, like X and Y, X meets Y. Everyone has put in a different thing. Like I've heard, gargoyles. I've heard Stranger Things. I've heard Sword in the Stone. Jeff Johns gave me a quote, and it was
nice.
It was Blue Beetle meets The Haunted Tank. And first of all, I had never read The Haunted Tank.
So. Yeah, I don't know about that one.
Yeah. So I was like, wow, everyone has a different like kind of entry to this book. Like they're seeing things that other people aren't seeing. So it's good. It doesn't fit like one mold. Everyone kind of feels differently about it. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, like before I thought of Blue Beetle, and because I referenced this a couple times on the podcast and in like, in conversation, no one ever has seen this movie, Star Kid from the 90s.
Star Kid. I remember the poster. I've never seen the movie though. Yeah.
I think it's kind of like there was a Mark Hamill movie in the 80s called Guyver, I think.
Yeah. With Mark Hamill.
Yeah, it's kind of, I don't want to say it's a ripoff, but a kid, like a suit of alien armor crash lands in a junkyard, and this kid puts it on, and it kind of becomes like an exoskeleton for him. He fights bullies and stuff. But it made me think of that. That was one of my favorite movies for whatever reason when I was growing up. Maybe it was the only movie Blockbuster had at the time, but
okay, now I need to see that. That sounds like my cup of tea. That's amazing. You know, I don't know if you know Brad from the Comic Book Couples Counseling podcast. He was like the book reminded him of a movie called House 2. Because there's this dead grandpa, he's like a zombie character in it, and it said that the grandpa reminded him of the ghost. So, you know, it's just things out there I must just be sucking in and creating this book from.
No, but I think that's cool. I think that if it just makes it feel more original. Like if everyone's giving you a different thing they're pulling from, I just think you're hitting on something. You're hitting on something in our cultural consciousness that just works.
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
so cool. So let's talk about the Kickstarter a little more. When does that end? Because I want to make sure to get this out before then, and for everyone listening to just make sure to back this before that happens.
Okay, so the Kickstarter is for issues 3 to 5. Although there are a few limited packages where you can get 1 through 5. Different versions. You can just get like everything, like all the foils and some of the mains. But it ends Thursday, June 27th.
So June 27th. Okay, so first of all, I got to make sure to back it. I mean, I don't know why I haven't already, but no, because I do want to stress again, like this is not just you sent it to me, I'm telling you I like it. Like I liked it a lot. I want to add it to my pull list. I'm sure the shop I bought it from is going to keep getting the next issues.
What shop was it? Do you mind me asking?
Yeah, so in New Rochelle, New York, it's called Squiggy's Dugout.
Okay,
it's been there for years, but they usually always have a lot of indies.
That's amazing. Okay.
That I can't find anywhere else. Like, I guess I could go to Midtown Comics and I'm sure they'll probably have it, but I always try to go local. I feel like Midtown is like, the big comic book company. Like, sure, I like them, but I'd rather help the local guy.
Oh man, Midtown got a bunch in, and they actually sold out and had to reorder. I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
I had a friend tell me he bought the last issue. So but and then another friend said, "Oh, they got more of your book in." So. Yeah.
Nice. Maybe I think there's something about the cover that I have it over here. Like, first of all, Nick Pitara, right? He's the cover artist for this the first issue.
And people should check out his Axe Wielder John book. I don't know if he did a crowdfunding campaign for it. I believe it was last year or the year before. And he's working on book 2 now. He's also the artist from Manhattan Projects that he did with Jonathan Hickman.
Oh, yeah. We've actually talked about that on the pod. We have a Manhattan Projects episode. Yep.
Awesome.
Yeah, no, he's great. I love his art. But the main artist, am I pronouncing it right? Ismael Hernandez?
Yeah, Ishmael Hernandez.
Hernandez. Yeah. Okay. So I'm not familiar with his work either, but I really love the art in this. I mean, it totally matches the story in every way.
I know. Well, we're so lucky we found him when we did, because I feel like he's going to end up being like this big artist at some point. That was Chris Stevens, my editor, who's an Eisner Award winning writer. He hooked me up with Ishmael. We kind of both discovered him online, but then Chris was like, "You need to go with him. His art would be perfect for your story." And man, was he right. Like, he just knocks it out of the park. The tone of everything, the style, he just nails like the character expressions. He's so good at sequential storytelling too. He reminds me of some of the storyboard artists I've worked with in animation, where I'm like, he just gets story. He just gets it totally. Yeah.
When you put it that way, it makes sense. And I'm thinking about what I said earlier, how the book just like panel to panel just flows perfectly. There's something about it that you can't put it down because of that reason. Like there's no point to like stop reading. It's like the story's continuing. You are kind of watching a movie, and it just works so well. And I'm also thinking like just the art fits, like there's parts of it that obviously are going to be a little lighter. It is for younger readers, and it's not like complete like death and like a kid has been attacked by like the shadow creature. But when the moments that are happening that are a bit darker, like the colors feel that way, the tone, it just matches it. And then when you do have like the more quiet moments where he's driving in the car with his parents, it feels like slice of life. It just feels like something normal happening, but it's the same art. And I feel like that's hard to pull off.
Yeah. Even, when I sent it to R.L. Stine, I didn't know how he would react. I messaged him just being like, hey, would you mind reading my book? Like, if you have no time, that's fine. He literally just sent me his address. That's all he sent me.
Wow.
And I was like, because I wrote a movie based on one of his books. So I know him through that, but it's not like I can call him up and be like, hey, Bob, you want to hang out today? It was literally just like hey, he responded to one of my Instagram messages. I wonder if he'd consider. So he sent me his address and I ended up mailing him a copy, like an early printed version. And his first response was, at first I wasn't on board with the art, but by the end of the issue, he was like, it totally adds to the tone of the story. He was like, it just, I think at first people look at it and it's like, well, that doesn't look like a comic book. It doesn't look like Marvel or DC. But then as you read it, it just adds so much more to the story than I could give it.
No, I totally agree. And also, you've been name dropping some big names that have given you praise for this comic, and I think that's so cool. Like you're saying R.L. Stine, I think you mentioned Dan Aykroyd, he does have a pull quote on the back of the first issue, Jeff Johns. That's so cool.
I'm so lucky. I have to say, I'm just so fortunate that with Stein and Dan, I got to work with them. A very small capacity when I say work with. But enough that I could get it in their hands, which a lot of people don't get that opportunity. So I'm fortunate in that sense. But then afterwards, I was really hustling. I went to signings and I was like, hey, do you want to read it? And thankfully they did. I've met a lot of creators that just haven't had the time to read it, and so the ones that actually took the time, read it, sent me an email back. I'm so thankful, because there's probably a dozen that are just sitting on the book right now, haven't even touched it.
No, but that's cool that you could even get that kind of support. I mean, I think the comic book community is you find the right people and everyone will support each other. And you, like you were saying before, you weren't really active on Twitter, but I've noticed that you're pretty active on social media, but in the sense that you're promoting your comic, which hell yeah, everyone needs to do that. But you actually share other people's Kickstarters and even some of my stuff that is just I'm just only starting out recently, trying to get my comic Super Guy out there. But you don't know how appreciative I am of that. And I'm sure anybody who you've been sharing, because not everybody does that.
Oh, it's hard. I wouldn't. Okay, so a year ago, I wasn't that active on Twitter. I didn't realize the importance that as you may be gearing up for a campaign, for your Super Guy. The one thing I've realized is how important Twitter and X and even Threads is. I just think building a community is so important. And I know how hard now it is to get the word out about a Kickstarter.
Yeah.
It's also really... It kind of messes with your mind a bit, because you'll be like, oh, I only have 100 backers. But those 100 backers are so important, because they're the ones that can get you to your funding goal. And that's something I never realized. And now I even if you don't have the money, a lot of comic book collectors, they just go to the shop and they may just spend $10 a week, and they don't have $50 to help a campaign. But, I say to people that want to just support the campaign, but want to get the comic on the comic at the comic shop, just donate $1 or $2 or $5, because that helps promote the campaign. I've started doing that as well. I'll just back the PDF, knowing that I'll try to get a hard copy later on down the road if I meet the creator, or if they're lucky enough to get it on at shops.
That's a great idea, because there's so many books. I only started getting more into Kickstarter in the past couple of years as I've done the podcast more and as I've been meeting a lot of indie creators and realizing how important that kind of stuff is. But a lot of times I'm just I can't drop $50 on every single creator, it's just not possible. Obviously, you see I have a ton of comics behind me, but my comic budget is still limited, in some ways. So I like that idea of just throwing whatever you can, even if it's for the PDF. I think that's got to be super helpful.
Because I backed stuff in the past, but it was for, a Joe Jusko art book, or, I think there was a Scott Call or a James Robinson comic I wanted. But now I'm realizing, oh, I need to help these real indie people.
Yeah.
I'm gonna throw up, but even if it's just $1, as a Canadian, just shipping for a lot of Kickstarters is absolutely out of control. Like,
sure,
I know a
yeah.
lot of Canadians are backing Armored, and I cannot thank them enough, because I think the shipping to Canada is like $15 to $20. It's more than a single issue. So, I'm so appreciative of anyone really backing it, but then to have them ship it internationally is nuts.
Yeah.
So I say, back the PDF if you want to support a Kickstarter but can't afford it. And speaking of which, your Super Guy is super fun. I cannot wait till it becomes an actual full-blown comic. Anyone that hasn't checked it out, reach out to Anthony and just ask for his short. What is it? 10? It's only 10 pages,
it's
right?
It's only 10 pages. I'll send it to anyone.
So much fun. It's so much fun.
And I'll definitely send you, once the new one's out, I'll just send it. I'll email you it. That means a lot. Thank you. Especially after I've read I like your writing now. So I'm a fan. First of all, I'm going to watch No Malone tonight. My newborn might be too young for it, but we're checking that out tonight. And just talking to you, I think first of all, you're a great guest. I feel like a lot of creators, not anyone that's come on, I think so. But I think some people promoting comics can be very dry. It's fun talking to you, and I'm glad we were able to do this, because you have a great comic. I know you're actually doing a bunch of signings, which is cool. I saw you post about that. One of them's going to be at the Secret Stash. I'm going to try to come to that. I've never been. First of all, I should have been there plenty of times, but never been to the Secret Stash. But that's definitely the closest one, I guess, you're doing to New York.
To New York, yeah. I think that would be the closest one. I've applied to have a table at the New York Comic Con.
Nice.
In Artist Alley. So we'll see if I get accepted. It's pretty competitive getting into all these cons. You have to have been going quite a few years, as a guest. So fingers crossed. But you never know. I keep getting asked now to do appearances at comic shops, but Secret Stash, I feel kind of surreal, because I do another podcast called Wizards, the Comics Guide, the podcast guide to comics, and that podcast, we just did an issue where we read issue 94 and we talked about it on the podcast. And there is an article about Secret Stash in that issue, which blows my mind that I'm going to be there. We're doing a podcast, and then, I get the chance to be there. I'm also going to be at Golden Apple Comics in Los Angeles for any people on the West Coast. I'm going to be at SDCC. I'll be there at the Clover booth, a few days. So yeah, I'm all over Ontario as well. So anyone that wants to drive north to Toronto, I'm doing signings everywhere.
No, that's awesome. It's so you're basically going on tour for this book.
A little bit. Yeah, a little bit. I just have, I'm going to be in Ocean City on vacation. And so the timing couldn't have been better for the Secret Stash one. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, it just feels like you're going above and beyond to promote this comic. I know it seems like you've been on a lot of podcasts, which I think is part, Twitter's important, but I feel like podcasts have become such an important factor in promoting a book. I know I'm friends with a few podcasters here and there, maybe some of the shows you've been on. But I feel like the podcast community really tries to come through and get, I think only this year we've tried to get more Kickstarter indie creators on. Usually our interviews are more with more established creators. But again, talking about that support, I noticed that not only were a lot of indie creators asking me to come on, but it is way more helpful. And sometimes people listen to those episodes more than someone you might know, surprisingly, which I'm that works for everybody involved. I think there's just such a great little indie comic book community that I feel like you've become part of it now. I'm not saying I don't know. I'm sure people are what's Comics and Chronic? Who's Mr. Tony Nacho? But even on Twitter, I feel like in the past few years, I've built up some sort of audience, and I'm hoping to use that to promote my comic, but really to help everyone else. Like I was saying before, I don't like saying I read a comic, it's automatically good. I want people to know if I'm saying to buy Armored, go buy Armored.
Yeah, no, I think what you're doing is awesome. Getting the word out about a lot of these, it is hard,
It's tough.
I just think even I'm sure, I know Image has a huge presence in comic book shops, but I'm sure a lot of their books, it's just hard to get the word out about them. And there's so many comics out there. So,
That's the thing, yeah.
everything you're doing, I'm speaking on behalf of all independent creators. We thank you. And soon you'll be thanking yourself for building such a great community. Yeah,
I try. So what about any other projects that you're working on, or is it full steam ahead for Armored?
Well, I'm always going to be working on Armored. I don't think I can stop myself. I'm too in love with it. Like I hope it comes across that how passionate I am for this book. Like I really do believe in it. It's like I've put everything into it. I've spent a lot of money. I've invested a ton into it. I don't know if I'll ever break even, but I really just want people to read it. I do love it so much, and I hope people love it as much as me. But with that said, I am 50 pages into my second comic series. It may just become a graphic novel. It may be single issues. It depends where it ends up. The script, I've written 5 issues. I've co-written it with actually my wife, who is a screenwriter as well. She's a showrunner on a TV series. It's an idea we've had for ages, and we were just like, let's make a graphic novel. Let's make a comic out of it. So we've written the script. It's like it's 5 issues. We've written all 5, and we've hired an Italian artist named Gaia Cardinelli to do it, and she's 50 pages into the book already.
Wow.
Like fully penciled, inked. It's actually digital, so fully digitally inked and colored, 50 pages. So we haven't even taken it to any publishers yet. We're kind of just like, let's get the first 2 issues done and let's shop it around. Let's see who's interested in this book. I'm really, really excited about that. But I'd love to work on other stuff. I've helped out. I've edited an indie book called True Believers. I've done some editing on that. I wrote a little short, 4 to 5 page recap for a movie that is getting a comic book sequel too. So I got to write the adaptation, which is 4 to 5 pages, that kind of recaps the movie. So I got to do that. But I have no idea where this will lead. I would love it to lead to other things because I love writing comics. Some days I'm like, I wish I could just write comics. I don't want to write another movie again. But movies do pay well. Comics, I tend to spend more money.
That's the impression I get. Like just a lot of indie creators, like I making my own comic, I have no, dreams of making money from this. I just want to get it out there. And in the same way that you're saying, like, you hope people see how passionate you are. Like I could see it. I feel like a comic like this, it can only be made from passion. Like I feel like it's again so unique, but it just feels like someone that loves comics wrote it. And again, I just can't praise it enough.
That is the highest compliment. Saying that it's written. Yeah.
Well, here's the highest compliment we could give you on Comics and Chronic. Usually we rate everything on a scale from 1 to 6 Joe Pesci's. There's a lot of lore behind that, but that's how it works. And I would give it a full 6 for sure. Okay. That's what it gets for me. Yes. Wow. So everyone who listens to the podcast knows that they're going to run out and buy that because the 6 Joe Pesci can only mean it stands with the likes of Watchmen and other great comics, and you need to buy it.
Wow, thank you. And just a little 6 degrees of separation here. I've co-created a TV series for George Lopez. I worked with George Lopez's company on a cartoon an adult cartoon series, and they have already pitched it to Joe Pesci.
Oh my God.
If it gets picked up in the next year or so, we're developing it still. Joe Pesci will be in it. So there's a little 6 degrees of separation for you. Yeah.
Oh, geez. Okay, so next time you come on, bring Joe Pesci. He needs to know.
Got it.
He needs to know. Or I'm going to send you a sticker, even to just give him our Joe Pesci sticker. Do I have one over here somewhere?
If I get to meet him, I will give him a Joe Pesci sticker.
I know that's I'm just talking to you today for the first time in person, and I'm asking you this, Joe Pesci needs to see this.
Okay, this is great.
No, that's so cool. That's so cool. I mean, just being a screenwriter, I feel like obviously you probably I used to work for WWE for a little bit. I was on their writing team, and I've been like a PA here and there. So like, I guess part of me has gotten over like being starstruck with these people, but like, it's always so cool to hear stuff like that.
I get starstruck. Are you kidding? Yeah.
No, that's so cool, Michael. Well, I guess before you go, what are you reading?
Okay, so right now I'm all in on Ghost Machine. I have to say,
Nice.
Jeff Johns really got me back into superhero comics in the early 2000s. You know, I had in the late 90s kind of stopped reading all superheroes. I was only reading Spawn, Darkness, Hellboy. You know, and it was Jeff Johns' work in the early 2000s DC stuff on the Flash that got me back into it. And so when he started Ghost Machine, I went all in. So I'm reading, you know, Redcoat, Geiger, and Rook. But what else am I reading? I'm reading the new Thundercats because I'm a sucker for 80s cartoons.
Nice.
I'm reading Masters of the Universe that Tim Sheridan's writing, but I also read his Alan Scott series, which is fantastic.
Yeah, he's great.
Yeah, I'm reading Green Lantern. I'm reading Ultimate Spider-Man right now. Just finished reading, what was it, issue 6 that came out this week. That was a pretty good ending there. Sweet end of that book. I'm all over the place. I'll be reading a title and then drop it and then pick up another one. Comics are expensive. So I try to at least finish an arc and then jump on maybe another title, you know, here and there. But I'm reading, I try to read as much as possible.
Nice. Yeah. I was going to say, have you checked out Space Ghost?
Not yet. I actually have the first issue. I just haven't read it yet. I've just been so busy with the campaign. I cannot wait to you know what? Tonight I'm going to read it.
Hell yeah. No, we talked to David Popose, the writer of that comic, and he's a great guy, but that comic is, I think it's one of the best of the year for real.
Okay. I've only heard good things, so I'm going to jump on that. Best of the year next to Armored, right? That's what you meant?
Next to Armored. Yes, exactly. Armored, Space Ghost.
Oh, another one that's really cool that just came out that's indie is Principles of Necromancy. Check that out. The art is insane, and it seems to be like an anthology series where it's like a different story about this really crazy character. I don't even want to say anything. Just check out the art. It's really cool.
I actually just got an email this morning that the artist, Eamon Winkle, was nominated for an award for that. So that's pretty cool.
Yes, Eamon Winkle. And I have to say, shout out to him because, I'd probably end up in STC somehow. But if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't have like a pro badge going into it. So guys, check out his book, Principles of Necromancy. It's awesome. And he's such a great guy.
Nice. I will check that out. Well, Michael, this has actually been a great talk. You know, I think we'll end it here. I think we've talked. We have a lot of cool things that we've talked about. But before you go, where could everyone find you? And tell us again, real quick, Kickstarter final date and anything else you want to say to the Comics and Chronic crew.
Yeah, I actually have 2 dates. So the Kickstarter ends. What did we say? June
27th. June 27th. Yeah.
I should know that by now. Okay. So the Kickstarter, the latest Armored Kickstarter ends June 27th, but also anyone that doesn't want to kickstart it, just doesn't have the money for it, but wants to pick it up in comic shops, issue 2 comes out June 26th. So you'll be able to pick up issue 2, and it's got the sweet 1 in 5 gold foil variant that you can get at comic shops. And it's by a guy named Jeff Dixon who worked on Aladdin, Lion King. He worked on all the Disney classics. So I asked him to paint me some covers. He ended up doing 4 covers for me, 3 of which will only be available in the Kickstarter campaign. And this 1 in 5 variant is his only issue that will be available in stores. So June 26th, June 27th. And where to find me? You can find me on X or Twitter at the Mike Schwartz, or over on Instagram and Threads at Mike Schwartz Writes. So that's it. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Mike, thank you so much for coming on. We'll get you on again. Whatever you're making, that 50-page graphic novel sounds great.
Oh, it's 100. It'll be 150 pages, but so far 50 pages done.
Well, whenever that's completed, you're more than welcome to come on. When Armored's collected in a nice edition, you're more than welcome to come on. Or if you just want to talk about something else, just come by.
Oh my God, I'd love that. Thank you so much.
Hi, you're listening to Comics and Chronic, and I'm Jacob H.
I'm Cody Cannon.
And I'm Anthony Iannaccio.
And you can tune in every Thursday to hear new episodes of Comics and Chronic.
And make sure to follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Comics and Chronic. That's Comics, the letter N, Chronic.
We'll see you guys next week.
Woo!
Peace.